When you're up against a trouble, meet it squarely face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders, plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer. See it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim. But never let your nerves desert you. Keep yourself in fighting trim. When the worst is bound to happen, in spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile when with troubles you're beset. But remember, you are facing just what other men have met. You may fall, but fall still fighting. Don't give up whatever you do. Eyes front, head high to the finish. See it through. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I would just like to start off by saying and thanking Mr. Kevin Bracey. Kevin Bracey, I met Kevin Bracey January 9th, 2006 at the Greater St. John Bible Church on the west side of Chicago. I was after something. I was going on Les Brown's website. I was emailing Les Brown's website, and an individual named Irv Jallo said, Mac, you want to see Les Brown? Go to Greater St. John Bible Church on 1436 North Waller. That was a block from my office. Fate. I walked in, I had on this same suit, I only got a couple. I walked into the church that night with a coworker, and we found a seat, and Kevin Bracey came out. And I had just written Les Brown a long letter about Les, and when you said this, and when you said that, and when you said, and Kevin Bracey gets up on the stage and says, I wrote this letter to Les Brown. And I'm just looking at this brother like, this is unbelievable. And he was the MC, and after he introduced everybody else, he came up afterwards and he did it. He did the 7-day mental cleanse. He did it all. And I got the opportunity to go to him at the back of the room and talk to him and purchase some products. And he said, join Toastmasters. And I did that. And he said, here, Mac, here's my number. Call me. And I've called Kevin Bracey every day since January 9th, 2006. I don't talk to him. But I call him every day on my way to work. And he has called me back a couple of times. But, you know, I mean, the man is busy, and I respect that. Because when he calls back, he said, hey, Mac, I get your message. I said, I understand. But I understand persistence, and they say success leaves clues, and his mentor had a story that moved all of us about how he kept going back to that radio station. And so I said, I'm just going to keep calling Kevin Bracey. And so that's what I did. And so I'm just so glad to be here today. And this is all about faith for me, that the fact I'm even in Sacramento all the way here from Chicago. Carlton, I just want to say to you, brother, I worked in youth services for a number of years. About a year and a half ago, after working with youth, because we think it's all about youth, that if you just empower youth and you work with youth and you inspire youth, then that's it. And I made the jump from working in youth, and I ran a homeless veteran shelter for a year. And it was a stretch for me because I went from working youth where I just figured if I can get them off to college, they would be fine. But then I got over here and I met men who had went to the service, served our country, went to college, had PhDs, master's degrees, every type of certification, had owned homes, had been married, had raised their kids, and found themselves homeless. I think it's a shame in America where we would ever allow a veteran to be homeless. And your story of your perseverance can save many lives, can encourage and inspire veterans and homeless people throughout the world. And I'm just glad to be here with the rest of you guys. This is rich. This is rich. I learned from Kevin and those guys, your network will determine your net worth. And so I'm gonna be calling y'all like I call Kevin. But the title of what I want to talk about today is called the Motivational Mack for how to win big in life. The Motivational Mack for how to win big in life. See, when you go on a camping trip, you take a backpack, and you need certain things in that backpack so that you can have a good time or a comfortable time while you're on your trip. But before I get into that, because who am I to tell you how to win big in life and you don't even know who I am? I want to start there. My name is Mack McGhee. I was born May 10th, 1971, to the union of Mack and Lorraine McGhee in Chicago Heights, Illinois. I'm the youngest and the only boy. I got 3 sisters. Carol and Pam and Tina. Imagine this, growing up in a house with 3 older sisters. I mean, they were plotting on me every day. I mean, my maniacal plots. I never got the last of the dessert or anything. It was a very interesting challenge growing up in a house with 3 older sisters. I mean, I was unique in the sense that out of all my male friends, I always knew what was going on all my children, General Hospital, and One Life to Live. Because my sisters made it clear that you only gonna have one life to live if you don't sit down and shut up. So I knew about Greg and Jenny, I knew about Luke and Laura, I knew about Asa Hilliard, I knew about Erica Kane. You know, and sometimes the girls in class would start talking about that. I'd be like, did Luke and Laura get back? And I had to catch myself. So, my childhood was pretty happy. My early childhood, I had pretty good memories. You know, my father, he came here from Mississippi, from Renova, Mississippi. He picked cotton down there. And he was working for a gentleman who was making a trip to Chicago back in 1956, and he said, Mac, I need you to help me drive up to Chicago. And my father got up here, and he never left. My father doesn't have a high school diploma nor a GED to speak of, but he had that entrepreneurial spirit. And he went from, at that time, it was you could be a self-made man. You could hang your shingle up and just be whatever it was that you wanted to be. Nowadays, they want you to have this degree and they want you to have that degree, and they keep raising the bar each and every year. So my father he started his own janitorial service. And one of the accounts that he had was a bank. And during that time, when banks were foreclosing, they knew that my father was interested in some property, and they would just come to him. Hey, Mac, you want to just assume this mortgage? And so my father, not having any education, not having any training, but having desire, just started getting property. And my mother was like, well, you know what, Mac, now, you're getting the property, maybe you should go to school to try to keep it. So that's not how the story ends, I'm gonna keep going. But the thing was this, we had a pretty decent childhood, but at the age of 11, the childhood that I knew changed forever. My life changed. That was a life-defining moment, as Oprah and Dr. Phil talk about it. At the age of 11, everything changed. My parents split up, and my mother became a single parent with the sole support of 4 children. And so imagine being the only boy, watching your mother have to work 2 and 3 jobs, not asking anything of my father, working 2 and 3 jobs, but still speaking life into each and every one of us, saying, you can be more, you can have more, and you can do more than I have, and that your father had. I want each and every one of you to go to college. And she said that every day. It was hard, though. It was painful for me to watch that. It was painful for me to watch my mother sit at the edge of her bed and scrimp and scrape from the bottom of her purse to give us lunch money because we were too embarrassed and humiliated to receive the free lunch at school because we didn't want, our friends to talk about us, because they had these little stupid green tokens. You walking around out there with a green token, everybody knew you was on the free lunch program. And so she didn't put us through it. She scraped the bottom of her purse each and every day. And so I didn't know it at the time, but that was when I became a man. At the age of 12, I became a man. And my mother drove me one day. She said, just get in the car. I said, well, where are we going? She said, just get in the car. And she drove me to this affluent community called Flossmoor, Illinois, to a country club where people pay, probably at that time, it was probably like $30,000, $40,000 a year, more than what some people made on a yearly basis. And she said, you're going to be a caddy. I didn't even know what a caddy was. I said, a caddy? Ain't that something you drive? So I was 12, and actually I was not old enough to be a caddy. But you see, I'm a pretty husky guy. And she talked to the caddy master, his name was Chuck, and she was like, look, you know, would you get by the rule and allow him to start caddying now? He said, yeah, come on. And so for the next 6 summers, from the time I was 12 to the time I was 18, every summer from sunup to sundown, I was out there carrying a bag. And I learned real quick, it was real interesting because these people were rich. They was wealthy. My mother was working 2 and 3 jobs, and I'm out here on the golf course for 4 or 5 hours in the middle of Monday or Tuesday. I'm like, where they work? What type of lunch break do they get? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I didn't understand it. But they were rich, they were wealthy, they were doctors, they were lawyers, they were entrepreneurs, they were business owners. They had achieved, they had old money. Some of them didn't really do nothing, but somebody before them had done something.
That's right.
But the thing was, that's why I learned to communicate. I learned to develop communication skills because, I mean, imagine you out there with entrepreneurs and millionaires and businessmen, and they Mac. So, Mac, what do you plan to do with your life? Every day. You know, and I mean, I didn't know. I'm just trying to deal with what I'm going through because I'm also angry because my father's not there. I'm angry about what I'm seeing my mother go through. I'm angry, but I'm pondering on these questions. What am I going to do? I'm going to play football. I'm going to play basketball. You know, I mean, that's what we usually say. And I did play sports. But even though they were trying to impart into me, I was angry. And a lot of the stuff I couldn't receive. You see, they say 2 natures lay within our breasts. One is cursed and one is blessed. One we love and one we hate. The one we feed will dominate. So at that time, I was feeding that negative side of me. I'm walking around mad. You know, young black male, mad, we angry all the time. You know, I mean, I was angry. I was so angry, my attitude was so bad, I played basketball from the time I was in the YBA on up. I didn't even play football. And this is an amazing story. I didn't even play football until my senior year in high school. Guess why? Because I got kicked off the basketball team. Because of my attitude. But the football coach was like, that's a big guy. He said, Matt, come over here, run the 40-yard dash. And at that time, I was like probably 195, and I ran the 40-yard dash in 4.6 seconds. And he said, well, what position you want to play? I said, well, I want to play running back. Of course, I mean, why wouldn't I want to play? I mean, that's a glamorous position. You know, I had never did anything but play sandlot football, but I played basketball. So I said, well, man, this guy gonna let me come and play football, and I ain't never played football, and I just bumped the guy who was the starting fullback out, and he been playing all the time. But it just sort of humbled me because it was like, sometimes you will have favor, and you won't even deserve the favor, but you will have favor. And I had favor. And I played, and before I ever touched the football field, one time, before I ever touched it, I was getting letters from all kind of colleges. Colleges all over was sending me letters, you know, come visit our campus and all this type of stuff. And then my football coach knew I loved basketball, so he was saying he could play basketball too. So I was getting Division II and Division III schools, hey, come play basketball and football. But I had a friend, a good friend, my best friend to this day. He got recruited by Notre Dame. Lou Holston was coming to the school and recruiting him. Barry Alvarez, Vinny Serrato, they was coming to the school recruiting him to come play at Notre Dame, and they had just won the national championship. So I'm like, I don't want to go to no Division III school, but that's probably why I should have went. And so what I did was, Illinois State University said, well, you know, Mac, we like you, you come on down and visit us. Won't you come as an invited walk-on? And so I passed all the little Division II and Division III where I probably should have went, and I went on as an invited walk-on with the opportunity to possibly get a scholarship. Because I'm trying to keep up with my guy who, you know, he was rated the 2nd best receiver in the nation in 1989. So anyway, but my attitude was still bad. And Jennifer, I had brain surgery too. But it wasn't performed by any world-class surgeons. It wasn't performed by any doctors who had invented any special techniques. It was performed by thugs. New Year's Eve, 1991. Thugs hit me in the head with the backside of a hammer, the clawed end of a hammer, 3 times. You want to know how it feels to get hit 3 times in the head with a hammer? You'll have to ask somebody that remembered it, because I was intoxicated. I was intoxicated. And the doctor, when I got to the emergency room, he said, after he bandaged me up and everything, he said, that's what saved you. The fact that you was drunk. Because I was at a New Year's Eve party doing all the stuff I wasn't supposed to do, all the stuff my mother never wanted me to do. And that's what saved me, because I didn't feel it. I felt the blow, I felt the power of it, but I didn't feel the pain of it. And they bandaged me up, they wrapped me up, and I left out. And guess what I did? I went back to the party. True story. I went back to the party. Bandaged up. Bandaged up. I went back to the party. Because, you know, that's a very dangerous age. That's a dangerous age. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. And so I wanted to save face. I wanted to save face. I just got my butt whooped. I gotta strike back. So I went back to the party. And it was one of my friends, and he's been my barber ever since high school. He cuts my hair to this day, named Daryl Dixon. And we was driving around trying to look for the guys and, you know, that type of thing. He said, Mack, go home. He said, go home. Show your mother what happened to you. And I listened to him. And it reminded me, because a couple years, or the next year later, Boys in the Hood came out. And I remember Trey was in that same situation. And Trey said, stop the car. Right, let me get out. Doe, stop the car. And he got out. And I went home. And I mean, my mother's a strong woman. She never let me and my sister see her cry. And when she saw my head, broke instantly, immediately. But that taught me a major lesson at an early age, because I was so humiliated. I got the scar here, here, and in the back of my head. I was so humiliated because, you know, we into our self-image at that time, how we look. You know, I mean, I look like Denzel. You know, so that sort of hurt me. You know? So I was a little upset that they, out of all the places they're gonna hit me in my face. You could have took my knees out. I could have been walking around like, but you gonna hit me in my face. Right. So I had 2 black eyes for 3 months. You know, and I'm at school. I mean, imagine, I'm humiliated every day. I'm back at school, and I'm walking around, and people like, shh, you know, people talking about you. You know, and you can't just say you got beat up, because it's obvious there was a lot more than that. You know, but it humbled me. And it taught me I had to learn the lesson of forgiveness the hard way. See, those 2 gentlemen that got incarcerated, they got locked up temporarily for that. They had other stuff going on in their lives. And they end up doing a plea bargain to something else, and they was out. And the next summer, I saw one of them at the basketball courts. You know, now they always denied it. I really don't, they hit me from behind, so I really don't know who did it, so I don't know. But I saw one of them at the basketball courts, and you know how people get next, and this guy had next, and he said, hey, Mack, you want to run? And I said, well, yeah, I'll run with you. You know, you can beat me up and everything. And after the game was over, I gave him a ride home. But the significant part of it, I let it go. Yes. So that I could live, so that I could have life. A year ago, we lost a mutual friend, this guy, because we grew up together. A friend of ours got killed in the suburb of Chicago at a lounge about a year ago. A guy, his name was Kenneth. And Kenneth was just basically an innocent bystander, and he got shot in the head and killed. And so, you know, all this stuff with me and this other guy happened years ago, you know, probably 12, 13 years ago or more. And so I happened to see him at the funeral, you know, and he was there with his wife and his kids. And I was there, and I'm married and have a child. You know, sometimes you gotta just let things go. And that's what a lot of these young men out here gotta understand. Let it go, move on, learn from it, humble yourself. Take the lesson and move on. And so that humbled me. I went through a lot, and I ended up finding my way. I ended up making some decisions about my life. And the things that I want to talk about now are related to what I call the motivational MAC for winning big in life. M stands for motivation. A stands for attitude. C stands for commitment. K stands for knowledge. And D, that's my middle name, but it didn't fit in the MAC, so but I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna give you that. D is for determination. And so we're gonna start with M. Can you say M? M. Motivation. You gotta be motivated in life. You gotta have, what's your drive? What's the influence? What's the passion that you're bringing to whatever it is you're bringing it to? We see people every day that do the same thing over and over. There's no passion in it. They don't know why they're doing it. They have no motivation. So you should stop doing it. What's the stimuli? What's driving you? That's what we need to figure out. One of my favorite cable shows, and I don't know if it still comes on, but it was called Driven. And it would just show these people that we all know who are like superstars now. And it was called Driven because they were driven. They had some motive. I'm a criminal justice major, and if you're in court, they'll say, this goes to motive. What's the motivation for you doing what you're doing? What's the motivation for you being here today? What's the motivation for anything that you do in life? You have to know why, and you have to be passionate about it. Attitude. Dr. King says it's your attitude and not your aptitude that will determine your altitude amongst the multitudes. How many of us know people with just terrible attitudes? The person that's not the morning person. Every day they come into work and, we know you're not a morning person. And that bothers me because it's like, why would you not be a morning person? Your God is giving you an opportunity another day to get it right. If you messed up yesterday, you have another opportunity today to get it right. You wake up, you got your use of your arms and your legs. How can you not be a morning person? Now, if I see you at 7 o'clock in the evening or something, you mad because something happened at work, that's different. How you gonna wake up mad? I don't understand that. I saw something the other day, and it was so impressive to me about attitude. I was watching some NCAA games, and it was a young lady who was a cheerleader. And she was at the top of the formation, and she fell from the top of the formation. And they had to get her a brace. And and I think real quick, I'm always thinking, I said, well, if her teammates had the Kevin Bracey's brace for how to stay focused, she wouldn't have failed. But they had to get her a neck brace to hold her neck in place. Because she had, they thought she broke a vertebrae. I think she did break a vertebrae. And as they was taking her out on the stretcher, she was doing this. She was cheering. She was cheering. I was so impressed with her. I sat down. I said, wow. Because that was sacrifice. That was not thinking of herself in any capacity. She could have her neck broke. She wasn't thinking about herself. Her thing was she didn't want to take away from the moment. She didn't want to take away what was going on with the team or ruin the mood of the crowd in that stadium. That's attitude. That's great attitude. You got people in your life who always, I got a partner, I won't call his name in case he see this. But everybody else that know him will know who I'm talking about. But he see the glass as half empty with everything. He's a hard worker. He works 6 days a week. He got like an 850 credit score, but he won't move on nothing. He won't buy property. He won't do anything. And I say, man, why don't you buy something? Well, what if we go back through the Great Depression? He finds every reason to not do what he could do because he's a hard worker, but he sees the glass as half empty. I don't work as hard as him. I see it as half full all the time. But attitude is something. Number C. But look, let me say something about attitude. If you take attitude, you know there's 26 numbers. I mean, there's more than 26 numbers, but there's 26 letters in the alphabet. And if you take the numerical value and assign it to each letter in order, and you take the word attitude and you add up those numerical values, it's 100%.
Wow.
And I got that from Napoleon Hill. I just read the book the other day. That was impressive though, wasn't it? That was impressive. Commitment is important, but you got to choose to be commitment. You got to choose to be committed to whatever it is. I went to Illinois State as an invited walk-on. And I got down there and they said, Mac, you know, we're going to redshirt you. And I'm like, okay, they're going to redshirt. What that mean? That mean I wasn't playing. But what it means, if you don't know what it means that you got 5 years to play 4. So there's like, you know, this is going to be a developmental year and, you know, you can, you know, do what you got to do and practice with the team. And so what it really meant was I became the scout team dummy. I was the scout team dummy. I mean, whatever team we was playing the next week, I was the running back for that opposing team in practice. Mac, give us a good look, give us a good look. But I was supposed to be the star running back for the opposing team, but I'm running behind the scout team line. So they not blocking. So our first string inside linebacker, he just knocking my helmet off, hitting me all over the field. But I did it because I wanted to give him a good look. I wanted to impress the coaches. I'm going to do this. I'm going to earn me a scholarship. I'm going to earn that scholarship. We went through the year. And then another thing was, because I'm on the scout team and I'm a red shirt, I don't get to travel. And so you got people saying, ain't the team in Akron? Why you here? You know, people, negative people. But I had it down. I said, well, you know, I'm a red shirt. I got 5 years to play 4. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I only got 1 year to use that. So the driving force for me was I got to make the traveling team the next year. So I did everything I got. I went through spring training, you know, like we're doing now. I went through spring training. And I earned a scholarship, which I hope to earn here with the motivation and all that. But I didn't earn a scholarship. But they, you know, they encouraged me, they sold me, you know, because selling is always going on. Either you selling them on something or they selling you. And they sold me, they said, Mac, you're doing a great job. Just come back to summer camp. And so I came back the next summer because we come before school starts a month early and we do 2-a-days. Basically, you get up in the morning, you practice in the hot sun with all that stuff on until lunchtime. You take a little break and then you go and you practice for the rest of the day. So I came back and I'm like, okay, as long as I make the traveling team, that way I ain't got to keep lying to folks, you know. As long as I make the traveling team. They put the list up for the traveling team. They traveled 3 depths deep. I was like 5th, you know. I wasn't traveling, and it killed me. I mean, I was so disenchanted, so upset, and I had a friend that was on the team, a guy named Mike Williams. Everybody thought we was brothers because we sort of looked alike, but he was from Murfreesboro, Illinois, and I was from up near Chicago. And he was playing running back, and I was playing inside linebacker. And so, you know how misery love company? He didn't make the traveling team either. So, you know, we'd go for break, and I mean, man, this, you know, they racist, they prejudiced. But it's funny. Because most of the team was black, 90% of the team was African. But you know, we'll come, any old excuse will do, right? So we came up with this plan. We was gonna quit the team on the same day. We was gonna go to the first practice and we was gonna come back and we was, you know, take our little nap, and when everybody else got up and went back to practice, we was gonna slip back in the room. We wasn't in the same room though. So I slipped back in the room and I packed my stuff and I drove to Chicago. I quit. Mike ain't quit. Something was in him that changed his mind like that. For whatever reason, he decided not to quit. Make a long story short, I ended up transferring schools. I ended up going to Governor State University. About 3 years later, one of my best friends came into me, and he had this magazine called Streets and Smith. And Streets and Smith, you know, highlight and showcase different athletes, so on and so forth. He said, Mac, you won't believe this. And he brought me this article, and it was like an honorable mention in the back. Defensive Player of the Week, Illinois State University, Mike Williams, inside linebacker. 3 interceptions, 2 he ran back for touchdowns. Not only did he not quit, he stole my position. But he chose to be committed. I chose to quit. He get to tell his children that he had a college football career. I get to tell this story. Somebody got to tell it. But commitment, knowledge is the next one, knowledge. We have to educate ourselves each and every day. We have to read. I was telling Kevin that I brought Kevin Lyle's book the other day, Make It Happen. I got home, I started reading at 8 p.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, I finished it. He was an engineering student. He dropped out in his senior year as an engineering student because he got wind of his dream, his vision, his inspiration. He said, forget that engineering stuff, it broke his mother's heart, but now he is a multi-millionaire, the executive vice president for Warner Music Group because he did what he was passionate about. 37. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. We have to work to improve our knowledge, skills, and abilities every day. If you've been showed, told, explained, and trained, now it's time to give it back. Kevin is told, showed, explained, and trained. Now it's time to give it back to him. That's knowledge, skills, and abilities. Dr. King has something he calls a dimension of a complete life. When you're interested in your own professional development, he says life is somewhat like a triangle. On one side, there's you. On the other side, there's your neighbor. Or across the top, there's God. When he talks about the length of life, he's not talking about how long you live. He's talking about you having enough love for yourself to develop yourself, to do some professional development. You see, he was a very thought-provoking individual. From 0 to 4, he was able to play with his Caucasian friend. When he turned 5, he was told that he was no longer able to play with his Caucasian playmate. At 5, he didn't understand that. He didn't understand what the color of your skin had to do with the content of your character. And so he asked thought-provoking questions and developed himself. He graduated high school at the age of 16. By the age of 19, he was an ordained and licensed minister. By the age of 26, he had his PhD. He led the Montgomery bus boycott, 381 days, which almost shut the city down. He was interested in his personal development. But he didn't just stop there. He said, you can't stop at the length of life, you have to go to the breadth of life. And the breadth of life is if you got love for yourself, you have to have love and compassion for your neighbor. You know, we're not neighborly no more. My mother used to send me next door to get some sugar to make a cake. And we were neighbors then. We cared about each other then. But now we don't. We lost an advocate of neighborliness a couple years ago. His name was Fred Rogers. And for 37 years, he was consistent in his message. And his message was, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day to be neighbors. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day to be neighbors. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be? Please won't you be my neighbor? As I close, I just want to leave you all with this. I didn't get to do determination, but you see that I'm determined and you understand that I'm dedicated to what I'm doing. But I want to leave you with this because people will try to tell you it can't be done. People will try to tell you you're not supposed to do what you're doing. And I just want you all to know that somebody said it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he'd be the one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled in with a bit of a grin on his face. If he smiled, he hit it. He started to sing as he tackled that thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, oh, you will never do that. At least no one has ever done it. But he took off his coat and he took off his hat, and the first thing we know, he begun it. With a lift of his chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled that thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell you it couldn't be done. There are thousands to prophesy its failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. So just buckle in with a bit of a grin, just take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing as you tackle that thing that couldn't be done, and you'll do it.
To come across in life. The first person is the person that I call the player. You know why I call him the player? Not because of what you think. I call him the player because the player is the individual that's in the game. The player